Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about something that really does need to be said when it comes to different training methods and things people do, and that's when guys who are still weak, and I mean weak by my standards, who say like, this worked for me. They say that something worked for them, but it didn't. Like how are you even quantifying that? And the reason I say that is anything that you do training wise, at least if you're doing any sort of serious weight training or strength training, at the very least your goal is to get stronger, to have dramatically improved body composition, muscle mass, things like that. Okay. And no, I'm not a fan of chasing that as a singular primary goal. It's one reason I really don't like, well, if you're only pursuing hypertrophy, well, I don't respect that. I don't program for that. I don't really care about that. And I hope none of you do either. I'm not saying it can't be a high priority, but it shouldn't be your only priority with training. Okay? It shouldn't be. And it's as ridiculous if it is. But let's come to that point of when I talk about being weak. Okay? Because even if your goal was just to gain muscle, if you have gained significant total muscular development without glaring weak links in your musculature, you're not going to have a weak squat or a weak deadlift. Okay? You're not, and particularly if you're actually performing those exercises. And in other words, if you put in several years of really hard training and your best max squat that you can do is, I don't know, 325, your best deadlift is 405, okay? And you talk about how, well, your primary goal is even hypertrophy. Well, you have some glaring weaknesses in your lower body and back. Okay? Because size equals strength potential. And we know this. There's plenty of research backing this. In other words, if you have truly strong, jacked lower body and you know how to perform a heavy squat correctly, you're not going to have a 325 squat. Okay? You're not. And let's come back over to the other point about body composition and energy turnover and everything else. If you haven't maximally developed your lower body, what are you leaving on the table in terms of total metabolism, TDE, energy turnover? It's going to make even the guys who want to lose body fat easier in the long term. And when your maintenance calories are 4,000 a day, or even 3,500, you'd be able to eat a lot of food while still losing weight. Okay. And the other thing with that, people will say, well, this worked for me, I got real lean, but how much muscle did you lose? And if you end up being weak, you probably lost significant amounts of muscle. And you lost it in places that you can't afford to lose it as we get older. Lower body, back, things like that. You probably lost a lot of that. So even a weight loss method, if it's costing you muscle tissue, how successful has that been? Because realistically, when someone wants to lose body fat, they want to lose body fat, not muscle. Right? They want the scale weight to be fat loss. You know, and I hate that already. People say, oh, don't look at the scale, look at how you look. Well, if you're losing muscle as part of the scale weight you're losing, then you're certainly not getting the best results. Okay? Because usually people say that because they're trying to imply that lots of people can recomposition significantly. That, oh, you might only lose 3 pounds of body weight, but you're going to look dramatically better. Well, yeah, if you put on 15 pounds of muscle, which is not feasible for a non-novice lifter, someone not doing their first really heavy blast of gear. It's not going to happen in any appreciable time frame. But that gets thrown out the window if a third of the weight you're losing is muscle. And that's what happens with certain diet and cardio methods and everything else. It's not uncommon to see a third or half of the scale weight you're losing as lean tissue on unsuccessful methods. So just because you lost body fat doesn't mean that what you did was a success. And let's come back over to, if you're weak, if you're still weak, that didn't even work very well. But that's the other thing. Guys will look at a training method and say, well, this works for me, so therefore it's going to work forever because they got a little bit stronger, they gained a little bit of muscle. Well, if you're a novice lifter, the programming that will help you do that is not going to be the programming that's going to work for you in the future. And that's a big, big problem. Because we can talk about learning to train correctly, and we should talk about learning to train correctly, but I can tell you right now, the majority of the successful novice programs that really do give people really good progress in the first 6 months. Okay? The ones that really work well, they don't work forever, and that's the other issue too. We get tons of novice lifters out there who they try a bunch of jerk-off programs. Which aren't even programs, really. That's the problem, is that they're not a training program with a set progression system in place, focusing on the basics. And they've run a good novice program for the first time in their life, and they get really good results. But they still lack large amounts of practical experience. Then what happens? That becomes magic. And that includes some of my programs, because I've got a couple of very, very successful novice programs out there that I put out for free. And people will then run those, and then all of a sudden they think they have the truth, they have the answers. Look at the phenomenal progress I finally made in 6 months after 2 years of spinning my wheels. Now they think they know what works. Not really. Because what happens? They know what helps a novice get his noob gains. Well, let's be realistic here. If you started with great programming, you would finish your noob gains in like 6 to 9 months. If I were to take a ranked novice in the gym and train them really hard, I can finish their noob gains out in 9 months. Not a year, not a year and a half. I can do it in 9 months. And I've done it before with people in person. So what happens then? Does that mean that they now have the truth? That they now know how to train because they got their noob gains? No. You better figure out how to make progress for the rest of your life. And I can tell you right now, the things that work as a novice are not going to work. You're going to add weight every week on your deadlift. Do one top set. You're going to squat 3 days a week and add weight every week. You think that's going to work long term? No, it'll push you through your noob gains real fast though. It's not going to work long term. Guys are still weak, but then they think they know what works, and they think, well, this works for me. I know what works for me. No, you know what works for a novice lifter who spun their wheels doing a bunch of jerk-off training. You know how to get out of that phase and get through your noob gains finally. It doesn't work for you, it works for a noob. Be the same as if you take someone who's in elementary school and you start them with a starting reading book, and then they finally learn how to read, and then they say, I know what works for me. Well, no, you know it works for you to learn the basics and to get through that rudimentary first year of school. You still have a lot more years and a lot more advanced stuff to learn. You don't know what works for you. And what works for you actually works for almost everyone through that phase. It's not specific to you. Okay. Long term, we're going to have to learn how to actually train. If you're not hiring someone, you're going to have to learn how to actually program. And I would suggest to a lot of people, again, I offer a coaching service with limited slots, of course. If you don't have the time to do all that, but you're busy working and making good money, you might need to hire someone else to do it for you. And that's fine. It's like that in everything else in life. I know what I can't figure out on my own and have to hire someone else to do for me. Okay? Cost of doing business. Cost of reaching our goals. meaning we don't know what we don't know. And if you can't hire someone, then you're going to have to spend the time learning yourself. You don't know what works for you if you're still weak. If the most you've ever deadlifted in your life is 400 pounds, you still don't know what works for you. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.